So today we're going to be showing off a Sea Storm build, and while I'm here I'm going to pause just to take a look at my Mirror of Night upgrades that I'm using, at least the ones I find to be the most useful. Dark Regeneration is always nice because that means whenever I get Darkness I get some health back. Death Defiance and Greater Reflex are obviously both almost mandatory for doing really well. I took Infernal Soul. Stygian Soul is also not that bad. Those ones are kind of interchangeable for me personally. Deep Pockets is a must-have to have extra gold. The extra max health from Thick Skin is important to have. And then Privilege Status, the extra 40% damage versus any enemies that I have 2 status effects on. That's a huge damage boost with this build. And then I put the rest into my lower skills wherever I can. I obviously have Dark Foresight. I have God's Legacy maxed out, which increases my chances of finding Legendary and Duo boons. And then I have as many Fated Persuasion rolls as I can afford, which right now is only the 1 for this particular build we're looking at today. So let's get started and see how it goes. So the first keepsake I took was the Poseidon keepsake in order to get his boon right away. What I'm looking for, especially when I'm using the bow for this build, is the Tempest Flourish boon. This allows my special, which is my volley, to do a lot of extra damage as well as knock back my enemies, and with the aspect of Chiron bow that we're using, as long as I auto attack them once first, the volley arrows will all kind of focus in on my target, do extra damage, get extra knockback, and that supplies us with a lot of early game damage and a good foundation to kind of start as we're trying to find our other boons here. Oftentimes when I'm specifically going for a Sea Storm build, I will ignore any boons that aren't specifically Poseidon or Zeus. I guess I shouldn't say I ignore all the boons. If there's any Hermes boons that come up, I'll usually grab them because he has a couple of good ones for all builds. And I also grabbed Demeter boons because Demeter can give us a lot of extra special utility for the build. If we're lucky enough, we'll get Jolted Fusion, which is the duo boon between Demeter and Zeus, and her chill effects help us earlier on get Privileged Status off before we get Jolted or Ruptured. So I think I also grabbed some Artemis boons as the game gets going, but a lot of the other gods like Ares, Aphrodite, Dionysus, I really don't grab a lot of because for this particular build, they don't do me a whole lot of good, so you'll see me ignoring boons from time to time because of that. So by the time I reached the first boss, which in this case was Electo, I didn't have a whole lot, but it didn't really matter. I had the Tempest Flourish I grabbed at the beginning, which I had leveled up with a Palm of Power. I also had Demeter's auto attack bonus, so my auto attacks inflicted chill, which helped slow her down a little bit as I was fighting her. And in reality, all you really have to do for this part is just kind of kite the Fury, whichever Fury you happen to be fighting in that given run. The auto attack inflicts chill and obviously allows my Chiron bow to focus all of the Tempest Flourish volley onto Electo, which you'll see does a pretty decent chunk of damage. So as long as I maintain my distance, dodge her attacks, and just keep pegging her with auto attacks and volleys, it's pretty easy to get through the fight without taking a whole lot of damage, and that allows us to just focus on the next part of the run. Before going up to level 2 in Asphodel, I switched my keepsake to the Zeus keepsake because I needed to start getting some Zeus boons, and I also sold an Artemis boon that I was kind of forced to grab partway through the run, so that I was sticking, like I said, primarily with Zeus, Poseidon, and a little bit of Demeter boons at this point. Asphodel is where my build really kind of got finished, at least in its core sense. I was able to get both the Hermes boons I wanted, which is the coins every chamber and the extra dash. And then I was able to buy Thunder Dash in a shop, which really by itself wasn't that crazy, but it allowed me to get Sea Storm in the very next room that had a Zeus boon. Sea Storm allows all my knockback effects to hit the enemy with a bolt of lightning. So each one of those arrows from the volley that hits my target drops a bolt of lightning on them, which again increases our damage fairly significantly. We also grabbed another Artemis boon partway through because Artemis has a couple of nice boons to help support the build. Since I was already able to get Sea Storms, I wasn't as worried about sticking with specifically Zeus and Poseidon, so now I'm just focusing on grabbing things to help buff up my damage even more. With my core build kind of completed, the Hydra was fairly trivial when I got to him. The Sea Storm knockback effect did a ton of damage both to him and his little heads that he sprouts, so all I had to do again was make sure I was dodging and keeping out of the way of their abilities while kind of pegging them from a distance. I didn't really have to worry about aim except on the auto attacks, which isn't that hard to do with the bow, and with the extra dash from Hermes, I was able to rip through the Hydra fairly quickly and make my way to Elysium. Moving into Elysium, I decided to switch my keepsake to the coin purse. I usually try to take it in part 1 or part 2, but I hadn't had a chance to because I was busy grabbing Zeus and Poseidon boons, so I decided to take it for this one because it would give me some extra gold in the shops. And at this point in the run, I felt that my build was solid enough to get through Act 3 without any extra help from, say, the Bone Hourglass Wells or from the Lucky Tooth or the extra health from the collar. So I decided to just go with the coin purse to give me extra money to buff up my build even further as I hit the shops in Elysium. Working through Elysium, the second Daedalus hammer I got gave me concentrated volley, which increases the damage my enemies take from each consecutive volley arrow. I also got the Jolted status effect from the Trial of the Gods, and I got Razor Shoals from the Minotaur mini-boss fight, which lets my knockbacks rupture my foes. Jolted and Rupture are both status effects, so now anything hit with my volley triggers the Privilege status effect, which increases my damage even further than what it was already at. Leading up to the boss fight, I also got Support Fire from Artemis, which gave me extra damage, and I happened to get Jolted Fusion, which is the dual boon between Demeter and Zeus, which makes my Jolted effects last longer and deal more damage. Going into this boss fight, I definitely felt more than prepared with all the boons I'd collected up to this point. I always usually focus the Minotaur because Theseus gets a bonus from the gods when he gets to half health, and he's pretty easy to dodge if you just be mindful of his spear and keep your distance from him. The Minotaur took a lot of damage from my hits, and so as long as I kept my distance and ran him down, it was pretty easy to kill him first. Theseus is a little more, not difficult, but just more time consuming because you have to work around his shield, but for the most part, as long as you kite his attacks and dodge the attacks from the gods, it's easy to work your way around him and just kind of finish him off without much damage being taken once the Minotaur is already dead. At this point, I didn't feel there was anything the build was really lacking going into the Temple of Styx, so I just took the Lucky Tooth to have an extra Death Defiance just in case something happened, and then I just sold a couple of boons I didn't think I needed, and then I just started working my way through Act 4, grabbing a couple of boons along the way, up until the Hades fight. I made it to the Hades fight without losing any Death Defiances, so I figured the fight would go pretty easily. Again, just like with the other bosses, I kept my distance, pegged him whenever I could. During Phase 1, when he has the minions, it can be a little annoying because you need to kill the minions while he's invisible if you can. And then once I got to Phase 2, it was pretty much just tank and spank from there. Just kind of keeping my distance, keeping out of the way of his laser beams, and damaging him until he eventually died. All in all, this run was a great example for this build. The only things that would have made it a little better or safer in a beginner aspect would be to maybe have something from Athena like her dash so that I could deflect more things throughout the run. But in general, with this particular weapon, so long as I had that special from Poseidon, I eventually got the Jolted effect from Zeus, and I had Sea Storm, and I also got Rupture from Poseidon. Those were the big things that really made this build take off. The stuff from Demeter definitely helped a ton, but it wasn't mandatory by any means to have beaten the game. So when you're playing this build, definitely focus on those couple of boons before anything else. That's all I have for you guys this time. Hope this build helps you guys out. It doesn't require you to have a lot of investment into the game. I just had the basic aspect of Chiron when I made this run. It wasn't fully upgraded and it didn't have as many arrows as it could have had if I had upgraded it more or gotten the hammers. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. If you want to see me playing live, my Twitch chat and my Discord channel are both in the description below, and I will see you guys next time.